Have you noticed lately how common it seems to be hearing people talk about gut issues?
Yeah, it really feels like it's everywhere.
Like constant bloating or nagging discomfort, maybe IBS. It just feels like way more people struggle with this now than, say, 20 years ago.
It does feel that way, doesn't it?
It's almost become, well, normal.
And the sources you shared for this deep dive, they really pick up on that observation right at the start.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive all about intestinal health.
Okay.
We're going to explore why these problems seem to be on the rise, some genuinely surprising ways gut issues can impact your entire body,
Yeah, things you might not expect.
things you might never connect to your digestive system. And then we'll get into different approaches to what some call cleaning the colon.
Right, like colonic cleansing, hydrotherapy, that kind of thing.
That specific method, yeah, but also various alternatives the source discusses.
And as always with a deep dive, we're pulling the most important insights and, knowledge nuggets directly from the sources you've provided.
We're basically your guides through the material.
Exactly.
Our mission for this dive is to really unpack these sources, understand the what, the why, and the how behind today's intestinal health challenges and these cleansing methods.
And crucially, figuring out who might benefit according to these sources.
Right, and maybe even more importantly, who should absolutely steer clear.
Okay, sounds good. Ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So the source starts by stating this outright observation. Intestinal problems appear, well, significantly more frequent today compared to just 2 decades ago.
Yes, it notes a clear, perceived increase in issues like irritable bowel syndrome, general digestive discomfort,
Bloating.
bloating, and
Yeah.
changes in bowel habits. Both constipation and diarrhea seem more prevalent now.
And it doesn't just make the observation, it suggests why. What might be driving this big shift?
Right. The source points to a combination of factors, things we see changing over the last 20 years.
Like what?
Shifts in diet, for one. Increased stress levels, definitely. Overall changes in habits and lifestyle. And significantly, profound alterations in our bacterial flora, our gut microbes.
Wow, okay.
These are seen as key variables kind of explaining the difference between now and then.
Okay, so it's not a single villain, but like a complex mix of modern life factors.
Pretty much.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a little alarming. The source talks about how a poorly functioning digestive system isn't just about feeling uncomfortable after a meal.
No, not at all.
It can have a vast systemic impact throughout your entire body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It details a wide range of symptoms that, according to the source, can stem directly from intestinal dysfunction. We're talking about chronic low energy levels,
Yeah, I know a lot of people struggle with that. Fatigue.
increased intestinal permeability, often referred to as leaky gut.
And what does that actually mean in, simple terms? Leaky gut.
Okay, think of the lining of your intestine like a really fine mesh filter, right?
Right.
Leaky gut is where that mesh gets damaged, the gaps widen a bit, and that allows particles like undigested food fragments, toxins, or bacteria that should stay safely inside the gut
To get out.
to pass through into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
And the source links this increased permeability to things like premature aging,
Wow.
and even suggests connections to certain autoimmune diseases.
So things that shouldn't be getting into your main system are, and we mentioned bacterial flora changes earlier. How does that tie into the systemic impact?
Well, alterations in the gut bacteria are seen as a major consequence, but also a contributor.
Okay.
This dysfunctional flora leads to a whole cascade of problems. Worse immune function, issues with hormone production, decreased absorption of nutrients over time, which can lead to long-term nutritional deficits.
Right. Not getting the good stuff.
Exactly. And importantly, an accumulation of toxins in the body.
And the source is very pointed here, isn't it? Identifying those last two, nutritional deficits and toxin accumulation, as two absolutely key variables for the development of chronic diseases.
Precisely. I mean, if your fundamental factory for getting good stuff in, nutrients, and bad stuff out, waste and toxins, is compromised,
The whole foundation is shaky.
right, the foundation for health is shaky. The source also highlights that a colon not functioning properly creates an environment much more prone to the accumulation and overgrowth of parasites and candida.
Okay, now for one of those surprising connections you mentioned, the one in the source that really makes you pause. Lower back pain.
Yeah.
How on earth does gut health connect to pain in your lower back?
It's a fascinating anatomical link, actually. Your intestines, both small and large, aren't just sort of floating around in there.
Okay.
They're held in place. They're connected to the posterior abdominal wall, the pelvic floor, and importantly, the lumbar spine.
The lower back.
Yes, by sheets of connective tissue called fascial sheets or mesenteries. These tissues contain blood vessels, nerves, all essential for the gut.
So they're like anchors or tethers.
Exactly. Fixed points. So the idea is when you have chronic inflammation in the intestines, that tissue becomes tense, it gets contracted. And that tension can actually pull forward on these fascial sheets that are attached to your lower back.
Oh, so the inflamed gut is literally pulling on something anchored to your spine.
That's the idea presented in the source. This pulling can lead to inflammation and tension in that lumbar area, and it manifests as chronic lower back pain.
Wow.
The source notes they often observe that as intestinal inflammation is reduced, this type of associated lumbar pain also decreases.
Even if you never realized the connection existed beforehand.
Exactly. It's a subtle mechanical link.
That's incredible, thinking your back is the problem, but the tension is actually originating way over in your gut. It really underlines how connected everything is.
It absolutely does.
And there's another surprising connection, this one related to the mind, mood, and cognition.
Yes. The source points to digestive issues, particularly related to colon dysfunction, showing up as symptoms like chronic headaches, difficulty concentrating, or, brain fog,
Yeah, that foggy feeling.
and alterations in mood.
Like just feeling inexplicably off. Or maybe more irritable or down.
Potentially, yes. The source even brings it a historical note, referencing the ancient word melancholy.
Melancholy.
Yeah.
Which today means like a kind of thoughtful sadness.
Right. But in ancient times, it literally meant black bile.
Black bile.
Yeah. And some historical interpretations link this directly to the appearance of, dark feces or the overall state of the intestines.
Wow. So an ancient intuition linking the state of the gut to one's emotional state.
Exactly. And while that was an ancient idea, the source notes it's not entirely disconnected from what we understand today about the gut-brain axis.
That communication highway.
That constant communication pathway between your digestive system and your brain. Intestinal inflammation and those shifts in gut flora we talked about, they can profoundly affect your mood and cognitive function because of this direct connection. It goes both ways.
So the state of your gut isn't just causing physical aches or digestive upset. It can literally change how you feel, how clearly you think, how your mood stabilizes. That's a powerful insight from the sources.
It really is. It elevates gut health from just digestion to, overall mental and emotional well-being.
Okay, so having explored the widespread nature and surprising reach of gut problems today, let's turn to how people are trying to address this foundation of health. The sources discuss colonic cleansing, or limpieza colonica, as it's sometimes called.
Right.
The source first presents a common critique of this method, doesn't it?
It does. The common argument you hear is that the colon is a self-cleaning organ.
Naturally cleans itself.
Yeah, it naturally sheds its mucosal lining every, 4 to 5 days, which helps eliminate toxicity. So the argument goes, external cleansing shouldn't be necessary.
And the source acknowledges that this natural process does happen.
Yes, it confirms the process is real.
So then, if it cleans itself naturally, why would anyone need a colonic cleanse, according to the source?
This is where the source offers its counter-argument. It suggests that while the self-cleaning mechanism is real today in our modern environment, it's often only half true or simply not enough.
Why isn't it enough anymore? What's changed?
Because the source argues, compared to our evolutionary history, the sheer volume of toxins entering our bodies is vastly higher now.
From food, environment, stress.
Exactly, all that stuff. The colon's natural self-cleaning mechanism was probably sufficient for a different era, one with a perfect diet and perfectly balanced flora.
Which is rare today.
Very rare. So today, that system is often overwhelmed. And this is where the source suggests colonic cleansing can maybe facilitate things, help the body manage this overload.
Okay, so it's presented as a tool to assist an overloaded system, not replace a functional one.
That seems to be the framing.
How does the method the source prefers actually work? They don't recommend home kits.
No, the source is very clear in preferring sessions done in specialized centers using hydrotherapy equipment. Home kits are often described as being more like basic enemas.
It's just the lower part.
Yeah, typically involving holding fluid in just the final part of the colon, the sigmoid colon, for maybe 30 uncomfortable minutes.
Right. And hydrotherapy is different how?
Yes. In hydrotherapy, body temperature water is introduced into the colon via a specialized controlled flow system.
Okay.
This process gently distends the final segment, the sigmoid colon. But the crucial point, according to the source, is that this distension stimulates peristalsis.
Those muscle contractions.
So those natural muscular contractions that move waste along it stimulates them throughout the entire length of the colon, not just the end bit.
Ah, so it's encouraging the whole colon to contract and move things along.
Exactly. It's like sending a gentle signal up the line. And the stated goal is that the stimulated contraction helps the colon eliminate stagnant residues.
Stagnant stuff, like what?
Specifically things like undigested protein buildup and older fecal matter that might have become adhered or stuck to the mucosal walls over time.
Stuff that regular bowel movements might miss.
That's the idea. Stuff that isn't easily dislodged by normal evacuation.
Okay, targeting that built-up material. What does the source say are the main benefits they see from this method?
Well, the source sees the elimination of this adhered fecal matter as the major benefit.
And what makes that the major benefit from their perspective? Why is getting rid of that adhered stuff so important?
The source's perspective is, and they are careful to acknowledge a lack of large, formal, randomized controlled studies specifically proving this link.
Right, an important distinction.
Yes. But they observe in their practice that the elimination of this adhered matter through colonic cleansing seems to be associated with reducing the rate of colon cancer in the population.
Okay, so an observed clinical association, not yet proven cause and effect from big studies.
Exactly. They present it as a significant potential benefit they see clinically, but they're clear about that distinction.
That's a key nuance, observing an association in practice versus a proven causal link from large-scale studies. Okay, so that's the hydrotherapy method. What about alternative ways to support colon health or cleanse, according to the sources? Hydrotherapy is the most sort of exhaustive but not the only tool.
Correct. The sources definitely discuss other approaches, often more gentle or dietary-based.
Like what, for example?
Green juices are one example mentioned.
Okay.
The source describes them as being made from blended vegetables and water, with a specific note not to add fruit.
No fruit. Why is that?
They feel it can add unnecessary sugar and potentially cause fermentation issues in some people, so just greens and water.
Got it. How are they used and what are they supposed to do?
They're typically recommended daily for a period of maybe around a month or so. They provide fiber and nutrients.
Makes sense.
And the source suggests they help accelerate transit time, how quickly food moves through you, and maybe improve the bacterial climate in the gut, potentially by altering its pH.
Okay.
This can also stimulate peristalsis a bit and lower inflammation.
Do they have that same specific benefit of removing adhered matter like the hydrotherapy method aims for?
No, the source notes this as a key limitation.
Sure.
Green juices don't specifically target or dislodge old adhered fecal matter in the
Right.
same way. Different mechanism, different goal.
Okay. What about just eating more fiber-rich foods? That feels like a very common recommendation for bowel regularity.
It is, definitely. And the source agrees that increasing dietary fiber helps speed up bowel movements and makes waste less dense, which facilitates the elimination of toxins and waste.
Sounds good.
However, it also points out some challenges associated with dramatically increasing raw fiber intake, especially certain types.
Challenges. I thought fiber was just universally good. More is better.
Well, the source notes that the human digestive system isn't actually as efficient at breaking down insoluble fiber as, say, primates are.
Ah, okay.
So while fiber helps bulk things up and aids transit, simply adding a lot of raw fiber, especially insoluble, can cause significant distension and discomfort in some people.
Bloating and gas.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Also, raw vegetables contain natural compounds known as anti-nutrients, like oxalates and phytates.
What do those do?
They can bind to certain minerals, like calcium and iron, making them harder for your body to absorb. So while fiber is generally good, the source suggests it's not a simple more is always better equation for everyone.
Okay, that adds some complexity. So the recommendation then?
The source suggests basically testing your individual tolerance. Try increasing insoluble fiber gradually and see how you feel. If it causes noticeable distension or discomfort, that particular approach might not be the best starting point for you.
Right. Test and see how your own body reacts. Makes sense.
Yeah.
The third alternative mentioned involves tackling the bacterial flora directly, which, as we discussed, is seen as a major factor in modern gut issues.
Yes, using prebiotics and probiotics. The goal here is to actively improve the microbial climate in the colon.
Okay.
A healthier bacterial ecosystem can help eliminate toxins, keep things like candida and parasites in check, and importantly, normalize bowel function.
Which is helpful whether you tend towards diarrhea or constipation.
Exactly, it can help regulate things either way.
Sounds promising. Is it as simple as just grabbing any bottle of probiotics off the shelf, though?
The source says generally no. It's usually more complex than that.
Hmm.
The ideal approach often depends on your specific bacterial needs. And they even mention that specific flora studies or tests are now available to help identify imbalances.
Interesting. Personalized probiotics, almost. Any caveats with just taking general probiotic?
Yes, a potential issue highlighted is that if you introduce the wrong types of bacteria for your specific situation,
Mm-hmm.
they could potentially be highly fermenting bacteria, and they might actually increase abdominal distension and discomfort.
So you could make things worse.
Potentially, yes,
Yes.
which is the opposite of what you want.
Okay, so it's not a guaranteed win just by taking something. Does the source offer a recommended starting point for improving flora, especially if you don't have those specific tests?
They do. If you're looking to improve your flora, transit, digestion, and maybe reduce toxicity without specific test results, the source recommends starting with prebiotics first.
Prebiotics first. Why that order?
They suggest focusing on soluble fibers, like inulin or psyllium husk. They specifically recommend ground psyllium over things like flax or chia seeds for this purpose.
Okay.
They also mention less common sources like baobab fruit or even fruit peel sometimes. The reason for starting with prebiotics is that they essentially feed the beneficial bacteria you already have.
Ah, improving the existing habitat first, like preparing the soil.
Exactly. By providing food for your current good bacteria, you improve the internal environment gradually, make it more hospitable.
Right.
Then, after you've created a better habitat, the course suggests you can incorporate probiotics to further enhance the general bacterial climate, help control candida and parasites, and work towards normalized bowel function.
So it's about cultivating the right garden first, then maybe adding specific beneficial plants.
That's a great analogy for it. It's presented as a more strategic order of operations.
That's a really useful distinction and order. Prebiotics first to feed the good guys you have, then consider probiotics. That's a solid nugget of actionable advice from the source.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about creating the right conditions first. Yeah.
Okay, circling back to colonic cleansing itself, the hydrotherapy method. Once someone has potentially benefited, or maybe they're considering it, how often does the source suggest doing it?
It depends. For someone who has no significant digestive issues, generally healthy.
Just maintenance.
Yeah, the source suggests that maybe once per year is sufficient as a maintenance or preventative step.
What about someone who does have ongoing issues, like that distension we talked about, or known flora imbalances?
For someone with those kinds of active digestive issues or marked distension, it's suggested that they might use the method more frequently initially,
Okay.
but really only until the underlying flora imbalance is resolved. It's not meant to be a constant thing.
Right, more often if needed to address an issue, but with an end goal of not needing it as often. Is there anything absolutely critical to remember about the frequency or doing it at all?
Yes, and the source really stresses this point repeatedly. You must always follow a colonic cleanse with probiotics afterwards,
Every single time.
every single time. And ideally, they recommend using a probiotic with as many diverse strains as possible.
Why is that so crucial? What happens if you don't?
Because the cleansing process, while aiming to remove unwanted material, inevitably also washes away a significant amount of bacteria, both good and bad, from that final segment of the colon.
Ah, it clears the decks.
It does. So if you don't actively replenish the beneficial flora afterwards, especially if your flora was already poor to begin with,
They create a vacuum.
essentially, yes,
Yeah.
you create an environment that's susceptible to imbalances, or worse, the overgrowth of things like candida or parasites that might be lurking. This is also why the source explicitly states you can't just do it, say, weekly, without diligent, consistent probiotic reintroduction each time.
That's a really important safety and effectiveness point. Replenish what you flush out. Makes total sense.
Absolutely crucial.
Can colonic cleansing be combined with other cleansing processes people might do?
The source says absolutely, yes. It can be used synergistically with other detoxification or elimination protocols.
Like what kind?
Things like candida or parasite elimination programs, or maybe a liver cleanse people sometimes undertake.
Why would combining them be particularly effective according to the source? What's the synergy?
Because these other cleanses often involve mobilizing toxins or pathogens from elsewhere in the body.
Stirring things up.
Right. And those mobilized substances often end up in the large intestine for final elimination. Using colonic cleansing after or during these processes can help ensure those mobilized substances are efficiently removed.
So they don't get stuck or reabsorbed?
Exactly. It acts as a kind of final sweep to clear everything out properly.
A sensible follow-up step then. The source even gives a recommended annual sequence for prevention if you don't have major candida symptoms, right?
Yes, they suggest a possible order. Starting with a deparasitization process first,
Okay.
then maybe doing a liver cleanse,
Uh-huh.
and then finishing with the colonic cleansing to help clear everything that might have been mobilized.
An interesting specific order to consider. What about diet leading up to a cleanse? Does that matter?
Yes, the source advises having a supportive diet in the days leading up to a colonic cleanse session.
To maximize the benefits.
Exactly. This generally means avoiding things like cereals, high glycemic index foods, and maybe heavy, slow-digesting animal proteins, opting for lighter, easier-to-digest foods beforehand.
Okay, so prepare your system slightly beforehand for better results. We've talked a lot about who might benefit and how it works, but the source is also very clear that, like any health tool, colonic cleansing is definitely not a panacea.
Absolutely not. The source emphasizes repeatedly that solutions must always be tailored to an individual's unique internal environment, their equilibrium, their tendencies.
Yeah.
What is helpful for one person might be ineffective or even counterproductive for another.
This brings us to a really critical point. According to the sources, who should absolutely avoid colonic cleansing? Who is it not recommended for?
The source provides a pretty clear list of exclusion groups.
Hmm.
First group, people who already have very good bacterial flora.
They're already balanced.
Yeah, consistently regular bowel movements, no issues with parasites or candida. For them, it's likely unnecessary and could potentially disrupt their healthy flora.
Makes sense. Don't fix what isn't broken.
Exactly. They might consider it once a year as a minimal preventative measure, perhaps, but more frequently is definitely not recommended or needed for them.
Okay, who else is on the exclusion list?
Second, people with significant intestinal obstruction, but specifically obstruction caused by external factors,
External, like what?
like maybe a tumor pressing on the bowel from the outside or severe adhesions from surgery.
Ah, okay. Why is that an issue?
Because if there's a physical compression or blockage outside the intestine causing the backup, the stimulated peristalsis during the cleanse will just push against that obstruction,
Causing pain.
likely causing significant pain, yes.
That makes perfect sense. Who else should avoid it?
People with known colon fistulas, abnormal connections for obvious reasons,
Right.
and individuals who have had very recent intestinal surgeries.
Because the tissue is still healing and vulnerable?
Precisely. The movement, the water pressure, the process itself could potentially damage delicate healing tissue. You need to allow proper time for recovery.
Okay. And the final group ties back to that crucial point about probiotics, doesn't it?
It does. The source strongly advises against it for people with very poor flora and marked intestinal distension, specifically if they are not able or willing to take probiotics afterwards.
So it's not just having the poor flora, but the unwillingness or inability to follow that crucial post-cleanse step.
Correct. That combination is key. The source's reasoning is, if you already have very poor flora in that final segment and you do the cleanse, you'll wash away what little beneficial bacteria you might have left there.
Leaving it empty.
Right. And if you don't then aggressively replenish with good probiotics, you risk creating that vacuum where candida or parasites, especially if they are present higher up in the gut, can quickly overgrow and fill the space.
Potentially worsening your symptoms significantly.
Exactly. It could backfire badly if that follow-up step isn't taken seriously.
That's a really important practical consideration. It highlights that this isn't just a procedure, it's a process that requires understanding and commitment to the follow-up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It could turn a potentially helpful tool into something harmful if not done correctly and completely.
So, to sum that part up, the source concludes that for pretty much everyone else, not specifically in these listed exclusion groups,
Right.
colonic cleansing can be considered and potentially be beneficial, provided the necessary post-cleanse steps, especially the probiotics, are followed diligently.
That's their overall perspective, yes. It's presented as a valid tool in certain situations for certain people, but it's absolutely not a universal solution for everyone and comes with those really important caveats and exclusions.
Okay, wow, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the surprising apparent rise of intestinal issues today to how deep and wide their impact can be on the entire body, touching on those unexpected links like back pain and even mood.
Yeah, the systemic effects.
We've done a deep dive into colonic hydrotherapy, its stated mechanism, the potential benefits the source sees, alongside those really important caveats and warnings,
And the alternatives, too.
and explored alternatives like green juices, careful fiber integration, and that strategic use of pre and probiotics first.
Right.
And critically, we've highlighted that none of these are a one-size-fits-all solution, with a clear list from the source about who should definitely not try colonic cleansing.
It really underscores the complexity of gut health, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And how different approaches target different aspects from, potential physical clearing with hydrotherapy to cultivating a healthier microbial ecosystem with pre-probiotics.
And the core message running through the sources seems to be about personalization. Understanding your own body, paying attention to symptoms like distension or how you tolerate certain foods,
Living to your system.
identifying potential underlying issues like flora imbalances, and then choosing methods that truly align with your individual needs and tendencies. That seems paramount.
Yeah, there's no single magic bullet or detox cleanse that just fixes everything for everyone. That much is clear from the source material.
It's about finding what supports your unique system's balance.
Exactly.
Thinking about that ancient idea of melancholy, black bile, and its potential gut link, now kind of backed up by our growing understanding of the gut-brain axis. It really leaves you wondering, just how profoundly is our gut state influencing not just our physical health, but our mental and emotional landscape, in ways we're probably still just peeling back the layers on.
It certainly makes you consider that feeling off, whether it's mood or energy or focus, might sometimes originate in a place you weren't initially looking, like your gut.
Yeah.
It encourages a deeper, more holistic look at that incredible ecosystem within us and how it connects to everything else.
Exactly. Definitely something to keep exploring and paying attention to in your own health journey.